Welcome to Thriving from Anxiety. My name is Sherry Anna Boyle, and I'm here with my co-host, Cindy Horgan. And we're so excited. This is our second episode. And our plan, as always, is to create some really great discussion about anxiety and stress, particularly in daily life. I know we're going to have a few laughs. We want to lighten things up a little bit. And finally, we're always going to leave you with some tips and tools for ways to not only cope with anxiety, but also how do you thrive from it, and you can thrive from it. I've written a few books about this, and Cindy is a professional presenter, and we want to support you on that journey. In between shows, I want to let you know that you can get in touch with us. You can go to our Facebook page called Thriving from Anxiety, and is there that you can message us, give us your comments, and send us your questions. Now, the first show, we defined anxiety, how we see it. In this show, we want to talk about thriving. What does it mean to thrive? And I'd like Cindy to start us out with that conversation.
Thanks, Cher. When we started to talk about anxiety and we started to really look at thriving from it, some of the things that I really put in my thought process was the characteristics that I see in people that I experience or that I have the opportunity to engage with, that I really see being able to move it forward. And so the characteristics that when I think of somebody that's thriving in this world that's anxiety ridden, one of the first things that I think of are individuals that have the ability and have a really good sense of self to set boundaries. And the ability to set healthy boundaries that keeps them safe, that keeps them able to give what they can without feeling like the life was sucked out of them.
That's right.
And that's what healthy boundaries do. They help us to stay complete. They help us to stay full. So examples of healthy boundaries, you know, I as I've matured, and I'm maturing. One of the things that I've been really good at, if somebody says, Cindy, do you want to go out and do this? You know, I know how much my sleep means to me. So I say, you know what, I can do it till this time. And I know what my boundaries are. So it's not about...
So you're able to say no.
I'm able to say no, thank you. Always working on the manners. I'm always able to say no, thank you.
No, thank you.
Or, yes, I'll go to this point here. Or, you know what, let me drive my own car because I really want to enjoy this with you, but I know when I'm done.
Okay. I like that.
And so the ability, whether it's a relationship or in what I'm capable of doing.
I like that.
So that's the one that's really hard for some of us. You know, because what we are, we're born to please.
Absolutely.
So when somebody says, can you do this, can you do this, and you're born to please, you say yes, yes, yes. And a healthy boundary says, this is what I'm capable of.
Well, particularly with anxiety, if you've been born into anxiety, with so many of us have been born into homes where it already existed before we even came out into the world, and we already were kind of feeling from an energy perspective of what that felt like when somebody was anxious, and it doesn't feel full, you know, it feels, you can feel that something's off. There's often tension in the room. So what people might develop is behaviors that attempt to bring that energy up again, and very often is a people-pleasing behavior that happens. So I completely agree with you.
And as a peer and relationship, I think one of the ways that we can sort of support somebody to thrive in anxiety is give them permission to say
I like
no.
that.
So very often, for example, if I call somebody up and I want to have a conversation, one of the first things I'll say is this a convenient time for you? And open the door for them to set a healthy boundary.
To say, I like that.
And so we can start to make it the way that we live by creating opportunities for healthy boundaries. And again, we'll know when we've crossed the line and we've left healthy, because then it looks like stress. It's anxiety, but it becomes a behavior and all those kinds of things.
I like that a lot.
And so really, I think one of the most wonderful things I heard one time, I heard a teacher say that she was really an engaged teacher, and when she approached a student, it was very comfortable for her to perhaps put a hand on a shoulder or something. And she worked with older teenagers. And she really worked hard on saying, do you mind if I put my hand on your shoulder?
Yeah, yeah,
and I thought, what a wonderful way to teach about saying boundaries.
About healthy boundaries.
Yeah. So that's one of my characteristics.
Great.
Any other thoughts on that?
Well, for me, Sin, and I love that, it's how I know I'm thriving, or even how I'm able to see it in other people, particularly when I work with people one-on-one, I'm able to get a little bit more of this, is perception, how they see the world, and their ability to see it in different ways. And I look at perception as similar to if you were to go to a show and you were to go to maybe a stadium, and there's different seats, and you'd say to yourself, okay, well, where am I going to sit that I can get, you're kind of looking for a certain angle, and then you might end up sitting somewhere else. And then if you left that show, you could ask everybody what they saw. Some people see things close up, some people see things far away, some people have more of an experience with other people that are there. But we all leave with a different perception. And for me, one of the ways to tell that I'm thriving is I'm able to look at something more than one way, right?
I love that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I work on that. I mean, because you can kind of get stuck in seeing it but yet you can give yourself permission to look at another way. And that's why I love this show. Right? And that's what I hope to do with this show for our viewers, is I hope that they're able to listen to us and come up with their own ways of seeing things.
And
right?
I think to value that, that's the key to this, is to be able to value different perceptions.
That's right.
And I come from a large family, and by the time you finish talking to each one of us, you think we all came from a different place. And in the beginning, I'm looking at my siblings saying, what the hell? And now, I know that their experience, their perception of how it happened and when it happened. I had, and again, once again, I'm maturing here. And so one of my younger brothers called me, and he reminisced about where he was at a certain year in our lives, and I was 6 years older than him, and my experience was so much different.
Right.
And to me, it was for us in that moment, it brought us even closer together, that we could see each other's different perception of something and understand it and see it as okay, and not like, what are you, crazy?
Right.
And that's often what we're saying.
That you could honor it.
Yeah.
That you could honor each other's experience.
You know
and
how
not
I
say,
feel about that word,
and not say
they're
right, and not say, well, they're wrong and they have it wrong and they don't remember. That brings up another good point as well, Sin, is when it comes to thriving, I think what can really help people, and what has helped me, is really being careful that we don't compare ourselves to other people, right? Because I know I am thriving, but the way that I know that is because I know where I've been. Right, I know my journey, and so someone may look at me and say, she's not thriving. Who does she think she is? She's thriving. I know I'm thriving, and the reason I do is I know the trials and that I've been through as a child, and I know some of the ones that you've been through as well, and just raising children and just development and so on and so forth. So that's really, to me, one way to really help yourself see it.
And one
clearly.
of the places that when you bring that particular characteristic is that comparing thing. We live in a world of comparing.
Yeah.
We have television that tells us how it should be and what we should be.
That's right.
And then we're in communities. I think that point is so important, and I realized as a mom, I'm looking for my mother eyes here, that was one, I knew I had finally arrived as a mother when I realized that I could only do with what I had. And when I stopped trying to measure up to others around me, and when I really started to be comfortable in my own skin, and realized, guess what? This girl's never going to be Betty Crocker. And so this girl's never going to be making the cupcakes that everyone talks about. But this girl can always be a presence and a support.
I remember always seeing other moms with their kids looking so perfect and clean, and even now, I walk around, I'm like, oh, you know.
Do you know one of my children wanted to be a Girl Scout, and I have to tell you, went into an anxiety attack. Not for any other reason than I knew I'd have to sew. I did everything possible to get those badges to stick, and I'll tell you, staples work. And I stopped worrying about it. And you know what? She had a great experience. She was a little bit embarrassed, but she grew from that opportunity.
Oh, you're too funny.
But you know, again, that was my anxiety. Like, oh my God, people are going to know I can't sew, and how crazy that was.
You know, Sin, can we talk a little bit about? And I know we've both have talked about this before. Just kind of changing to addiction.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that I know when someone is thriving, and I think about all these kids now that are either have a friend that has an addiction, or they might themselves, or a family member, and one of the ways to know when someone is thriving, to me, is when they get help.
Yes.
When they give themselves permission, also when they let someone know that something's off, when they tell someone and the secret's out. When we're keeping secrets, that's a little scary.
Well, you know what? That can't happen. That thriving can't happen with addiction unless we really look at one of those other characteristics, and that is emotional intelligence. And that we start to really model from very young children throughout our lifetime. We can never stop developing our emotional intelligence and making sense of how we feel.
Yes.
Because when we can't, that's when that addiction overrides. What makes me feel good? What makes me feel good? Right. And and I can talk forever
on
our culture. But I brought a prop up here today because we think of addiction as substances and illegal drugs and things like that. But hello. We really are tapping into that addictive personality.
Absolutely. And it's bringing a lot of stress and anxiety into people's homes. Absolutely.
So that 24/7, absolutely having to be connected.
Yes.
All of those characteristics that we've just talked about, you're almost undermining them all the time, because how can I feel good about not comparing myself and being true to who I am when I'm always checking in with the world? How do you see me?
How do you see me?
How do you see me?
And wanting to project myself a certain way to you so that you see me this way.
And and Cher, you and I have known each other for a long time, and you know that my fear of that technology thing made me go and purchase a lot of land up in Vermont where there will not be electricity.
Right.
And what I really have realized is that's not our answer. And when we're talking about thriving, we're talking about how do we thrive in today's world.
Right.
And I think
back to your boundaries, right?
Boundaries in creating balance.
Yes.
Creating real balance in a way that we utilize that. Not to make it fill us, but as a guide. As a place to seek answers, to seek information, but not as our companion.
Absolutely.
Because companion is right here.
Absolutely, the sense of connection, which is another way that we know when we're thriving, is when we feel connected to another human being. I was telling you, I had a wonderful weekend with my daughter, and it was spontaneous, which was neat. It just kind of happened, and it was really that sense of connection, and what I found that helped the thriving piece of that, because our relationship was really thriving this past weekend, was I had no expectations, and I didn't try to make it happen a certain way. It was just really, okay, sure, you can be with me, and we were together, but then we also gave each other space to be individuals. And it was really a nice experience for me to see how a relationship can thrive.
That's the word I was going with, relationship. That's what and you know what, we need to be in relationship in order to thrive. And when that piece of technology is our main relationship, it's impossible to do that. And to really create what I call healthy time, downtime, disconnect from the world of technology.
Well, and exactly, and I find I wrote this about this in the 4 Gifts of Anxiety. Is one of the symptoms that we don't talk about that much when it comes to anxiety is lonely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is a symptom. You know, it's not brought up as frequently, but when I work with people, and I find that that's a true characteristic of anxiety, is just feeling lonely, feeling separate. There's a separateness.
That you're just not fitting in. You're not finding your place.
Not feeling a sense of belonging. And you and I know that comes from, you know, being together and, like you said, creating boundaries and
to develop those relationships, and how, you know, a lot of times in that place of loneliness that you talk about, when you find that person, when their loneliness is that deep, it requires patience. To let that relationship and let those healthy boundaries be in place, because there's almost a level of like overkill in order to take away that loneliness. And so,
good point.
Again, it comes down to really setting healthy boundaries, and you know what, we can spend time together. You know, there's people that I love to be with. But I can only take it in such a dose, because there's such a level of energy that I can't keep up with, and I'll say, you know, I'm overdone. You know, I need to do a little detox here. I need some quiet time. And, you know, and I know for you and I, it was interesting, you know, we look at where our journeys of where we've come, and you come from a smaller family than I do, so I'm used to noise and commotion. And then, you know, I come into your world, and it's a very quiet world.
Sometimes. It was. You bring up another great point, in as far as I know we talk about worry a lot, you know, and anxiety with worry, and that idea of emotional intelligence, and how we worry is something we're relearning now. You know, we're learning that it's not as loving as we had thought, and I know. I just recently had this wonderful conversation, and somebody was sharing with me their observation, and they were in their parenting role with their co-parent, whether apart or together, and one of the parents worry was really the energy behind how they interacted with their children. You know, don't walk too far away. Let me know where you're going to be. Hold my hand. And the other parent was more of, you know, I want you to explore. I want you to see the world. Both parents came from a place of love. But the confusion for the child was that the parent that was saying go and explore, they weren't feeling it as love, because they were so enmeshed in that worry experience that you mustn't love me because you're not wanting me right next to you all the time. And it comes back to perspective, it comes back to boundaries, it comes back to... It also comes to allowing, you know, that's what it's bringing up. And what I mean by allowing is allowing people to feel their emotions rather than trying to stop it. And worrying about them is really trying to control it in some way. You know, we become a little bit of a feeder when we worry because we kind of match them, you know, rather we match their behavior. You're gonna get it gets a little frightening. So thriving is about feeling your emotions, and I mean, if we want to just, that's what it is, being able to feel. And it has to happen in every relationship. It's not just about those first 5 years, it's throughout our lifetime. And, you know, I think some of the most wonderful teachers I've heard in my lifetime, and I remember once observing a child that really was having a meltdown. We'll call that a meltdown. And I heard a teacher say, I felt afraid when I couldn't help you calm down. And so that first emotion, so it wasn't about power, it wasn't about control. And it's in that moment that I saw this child be able to connect. And so when we start from that place of really being, and you know what? Many of us have 4 words for our emotion. Mad, happy, sad, or glad. And there's many, many more. And there's so many more. And some of them take us a little bit of time to figure out what it is that I'm feeling. And for anxiety, one of those emotions is uncertainty. That being so uncomfortable in the unknown. You know, I just had the privilege of getting an email from a child psychologist in India, and it was,
I'm impressed.
I was so excited. It was
You
just
should
a
be.
privilege.
Yes.
And he asked if I would write an article for, they're having a conference there on anxiety.
Glad I know you.
So I thought to myself, I knew this conference was going to be a bunch of psychologists. I thought, what am I going to write in this article? And so I sat on it for a day, and then I thought, okay, I'm going to write about the unknown, right? Because that's really what people fear the most, is the what if.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? What if they get mad? What if I'm not successful? What if my marriage doesn't work out? What if I'm not a good parent? What if my kid, you know, all those what ifs, the what ifs, the what ifs. And for me, thriving is learning how to sit in the unknown a little bit and know that that space is actually a space where your wisdom lies.
Well, for two things here. If they want you in India, I'd like you to bring me with you. And my other piece is, the other place that I call that is Plan B.
Okay.
And I think when we're trying to model and help somebody else to thrive, it's not about giving them Plan B, but saying, okay, it's unknown to you, so I know your expectations, you're unclear here. What's your Plan B? How are you going to find that wisdom? And it's just a language that I use with children a lot. What is Plan B? The what if?
I like
if
that.
this doesn't happen, then what if?
Right. Help them to play it out and
But the
see.
biggest key to thriving
Yes.
is being heard.
Ah,
And the value of true
right.
communication,
that's right.
not texting, not emailing,
That's
but
right.
being heard by
Being
another
heard.
human being.
You're right.
You know, one of my
right.
sons was this past year trying to, when you graduate from college and you have loans, there's a lot of work that has to do to get that money so that people can get your money from you.
Yes.
And he was trying to fill out all the paperwork, and probably several phone calls a day I was getting. I don't know what they're asking here, and I could hear it. I could hear it in his chest. I could hear it in his voice. And I said, it sounds to me, I'm hearing that you're really overwhelmed by this process. And he said, that's exactly what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And I said, may I say something? So I'm setting another
like that.
boundary.
Yes.
And he said, what?
Asking,
I
instead
said,
of giving advice, you're asking permission
Yes.
first. Love that.
And I
yeah.
said, your older siblings went through this exact same process, and can I tell you that they too felt overwhelmed? And I am confident that you're going to take a breath here and you're going to figure this out.
Love it.
And
Wow.
you know, he just needed to be, he
Yes.
needed me to help him identify that emotion. And once I did, he
Yes.
said, that's exactly it.
Well, I mean, just
And it was breath.
identifying, hearing,
Yeah.
and then offering the reassurance. How many of us just need a little bit of reassurance?
Yeah.
I'm confident that this is going to work out for you.
Yeah.
You're not trying to make it all perfect and, oh, you're going to be fine, it will be great, but I'm confident that
And that
I
goes
like
back
that.
to perspective, and it goes back to the levels.
Yes.
When it's not in perspective, it's, that's it. It's broken.
That's right. It's not going to
Can
work.
we fix it? Can we
Right,
get a new one?
Right, yes.
You know, and
yes.
you know, in perspective means that it's like,
Yeah.
wow, this is an inconvenience.
Yes.
How are we going to work through this? How are we going to work
Absolutely.
around this?
Absolutely. Well, that's great, and I hope that our viewers are also thinking of ways that you're thriving in your own lives. And I want to start. We need to get to our tips here, Sin. And
You know what?
is
My
your
tip tonight is really mulligans.
Okay.
And you say, what is a mulligan?
Yes, yes,
It is a
what is that?
do-over.
Okay.
And to truly, my tip is to really value mistakes and not look at them as defeats, but opportunities to learn, which is
Like that.
our theme song.
Absolutely.
And you're going to make mistakes in life. You're going to make mistakes in relationships.
Yes.
You're going to make mistakes in your work, in parenting, and it's your opportunity to be in the wisdom moment
Yes.
to learn. And so
Yes.
life is about mulligans.
Yes.
And we all deserve a few mulligans.
Yes.
An opportunity to do it again and do it well.
I like that.
So I'm grateful
that.
for this week.
I am too. Let me give you my tip.
Sure.
My tip is a question, and my question is out to the viewers. If you can ask yourself, how do I know when I'm thriving? So if we can start to pay attention, how do I know when my children are thriving? You know, we're so accustomed to noticing when we're not doing well, but how do we know when we are thriving? What does that look like? And I
Yes.
guarantee you're going to start to pick up little things, little subtleties that you might not have noticed before. So my tip comes in the form of a question this time.
You know what, Cher, I want to answer your question.
Yes.
You know, some of the ways that I start to see it is people taking breaks. You know, giving themselves permission to take a break. I see as thriving.
That's right.
You know, when I see people, because I'm a pro work through lunch.
Yes.
And when I see people like, I'm going to take my break and I'm going to eat my lunch and I'm going to be intentional in the way. I'm going to taste this food that I prepared.
Right.
I'm going to enjoy it.
I like that.
Yeah. That's one of the ways that I see it. Where do I see it in those sort of people that are rested?
Yes, I completely agree with you there, and I see it. I find it so easy to see it in children, you know, and they're so in tune to the moment, you know, and when we're walking down the street or get in the car and they notice something and you realize, wow, you know, they're really present in the moment. That to me is a sign of thriving.
I love what you said about present in the moment. And it's not only children that can be present in the moment.
Absolutely.
We can too. And you know, really.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that's what you described with your daughter this weekend.
That's exactly what happened. And actually, she made a comment about that the next day. She said, you know, I realized that it's fun to be in the moment. And she had quite a bit of self-awareness that came up. And that, to me, is thriving, self-awareness, when you can take a look at yourself and say, wow, you know, I noticed this about myself without beating yourself up, right?
Both the good and the realistic. It's not about the good and the bad. It's the good and the realistic.
Exactly. I like that.
Yeah. So Sherry and I want to say thank you for sharing this week with us, and we hope that you take moments this week to think about how you're thriving. And if it's a